We've had several people ask about our thoughts on tabletop RPG games and our take on it, and whether or not Christians should be playing it. So we have finally made a video on that. And I'll tell you, it wasn't easy.
This is the third time that we've had to film this video. The first time we just had really bad quality of the footage. The second time, the video disappeared entirely. And in the process of trying to get set up today, we had a random chair break, cameras didn't want to turn on, and just a number of other problems. We're at this point convinced the devil doesn't want you to hear us.
First, let's get into what exactly are tabletop RPG games. I brought my brother along today because he is the tabletop expert out of the two of us. And while we both have enjoyed playing tabletop games, he's had far more experience and with more people. Glenn, go ahead. Tell us what are tabletop games.
So, in short, for those who aren't familiar with them, a tabletop game is play pretend with advanced rules. Now, to not sound so cheesy, you basically have what's called the GM or Game Master who runs the entire game, and everyone else plays a character within the world the GM is controlling. And the objectives are set up by you guys as players and the GM, and there are special rules to facilitate how you get things done and if you succeed or fail at your goal.
It can be a lot of fun. It's a good creative outlet where you get to have people together, and it's something different from video games or reading or watching a movie.
And if you're wondering why we're talking about this in the first place, aside from the fact that you guys have specifically requested it multiple times, it is a form of storytelling. A lot of tabletop games are going to be ran as a game first, but the modern culture around it is predominantly focused on telling stories with interesting characters and interesting narratives. And we're all about storytelling.
So, why is tabletop even a controversial subject within the Christian community? Well, this really boils back down to the 1980s during the Satanic Panic and Dungeons and Dragons, which is probably the most popular tabletop game.
In that sense, Dungeons and Dragons is often used interchangeably for the hobby as a whole.
And instead of saying a GM, the game master, a lot of people say DM, the dungeon master, which comes from D&D.
So, what actually happened during the Satanic Panic? A lot. The Satanic Panic could really be a video all of its own. So, we're just going to do a tabletop centric version of the conversation.
Now, obviously, neither of us were alive during the Satanic Panic, so we had to do some research on what really kickstarted it.
We're 90s babies.
And from what we found, so if you were really knowledgeable on the Satanic Panic and we say something incorrect, please let us know. We always like to update our info. But from what we found, it really stemmed from a psychologist who used hypnosis therapy on a client who later became his wife. Dating your clients, especially marrying them, are both very. That's not good. I don't. Anyway, but definitely marrying your client is a bad idea. So we already have some red flags right there. So anyway, he claimed that during this hypnosis therapy with what became his wife, I'm not sure if they were married at the time or not, doesn't matter, that she had been part of some satanic cult and did, I don't know, some rituals, and they wrote a whole book on it, and it kick-started the whole Satanic Panic where people were looking for satanic cults in almost everything.
And this was a time where both the secular world and the Christian world were looking for it. So now you have everyone's talking about it in church, and you have it being talked about on the news and in the media, and it was just a feeding frenzy.
And of course, with feeding frenzies comes absolutely no discernment or temperance. And so things got out of control, and suddenly evil was behind every corner. Now, I will say, I think the Satanic Panic was very much a preemptive attack from Satan's side, because the fallout of the Satanic Panic was actually that it ruined the discernment of people when it came forward to entertainment. Because suddenly, if you said something against entertainment and you said, hey, these have some evil things in it, people looked at you like, oh, you're just part of the Satanic Panic,
Fear mongering.
which is a problem because now look at the entertainment we have. It's not good. Someone should have called this stuff out a long time ago.
I mean, you just saw a thing online earlier today about people talking about YA books being just full of darkness and not seeing any like
Yeah,
real positivity on the shelf.
right. A lot of like witchcraft, a lot of demons, like a lot of really dark stuff that's not condemning. And we see that in even kid shows. There's kid shows where the main character partners up with demons to fight angels. I mean, come on, you guys.
But the angels are bad guys.
Yeah.
They've fallen.
What are the demons? Anyway, enough of that. We could go on a tangent about that, but we're just going to say the Satanic Panic ruined people's discernment with entertainment. And that's important going forward for this conversation. Now, where does D&D fall into this, Glenn? Take it away.
All right. So at the height of the Satanic Panic, there was a young man who played D&D with his friends on a regular basis. His parents didn't exactly engage in the hobby with him, so they just saw it as this distant activity he was doing. Unfortunately, the young man also suffered from depression, and eventually it became too much and he self-deleted. At this point, the mother, rightfully distraught, is looking for something to blame, a reason that this happened. And she looked into D&D, discovered that in the contents there were demons, cults, and magic, and with the Satanic Panic at its height, easy thing to latch onto and blame.
Now, was D&D to blame for his depression? Who can say? But she really took off on the campaign with it, and it gave not only D&D but the tabletop RPG hobby as a whole a very bad reputation, especially in the church.
Not only did she create a whole organization, Hollywood latched onto the kid's story to honestly, insultingly, make movies based on it with somebody who plays a version of Dungeons and Dragons and is suffering from psychosis and going crazy. It it got sensationalized like crazy. And, tabletop being a niche and relatively new hobby as a whole at that time wasn't well understood or really culturally accepted yet. So now you have it being villainized and made to look like strange people play it, and it just isolated the community further from the mainstream for a long time.
The big problem with this, especially with keeping out anyone who was in the church from the tabletop sphere, is that we did not have a Christian influence on any of the major game systems. So today, all of the major systems that most people like to play, because there's more than just D&D, have not had a Christian influence. And honestly, you can tell. Now, let's get it. Did the mom have a point when she was looking at D&D?
So I have personally never played the original version of Dungeons and Dragons. I got my start in what was known as 3.5. This is the third version of the book. But I've seen a lot of the old artwork and I've seen, information about the things that the designers were into and would include in their own games. There was a lot of nudity in the books and a lot of, you know, just dark imagery. It was genuinely in there.
And on top of that, what are some other things that you could do as a character, like through the rule book?
So in Dungeons and Dragons, and this is rather minor compared to some of the other games we could talk about. There are rules for you to summon, command, and command demons. There are rules to play a human half demon offspring, and there's rules for necromancy to raise the dead. There are genuine options to do things that we as Christians should know biblically should not be engaged in.
Now, I know there's probably going to be a lot of people who are like, it's just play pretend, it's just fantasy, it's a game. If you haven't seen our video where we talk about creators as leaders and we talk about biblical principles, go back and watch that one. It would provide a lot of important context. But let's be real for a moment. We know as Christians that we battle not against flesh and blood. The real enemy is spirits. The problem here is if you are summoning demons, making pacts, even in play, you are still giving the demonic legal access to you. And I know that might sound extreme. I might lose a few followers for that one. But that's the reality of spiritual warfare and why we have to be careful about the entertainment that we consume. And we really had this big wake up moment about entertainment really at the same around the same time. So
About 2.5 years ago now.
really feels a little longer.
Yeah, I was just turning 28. So
Okay. So it was a been a crazy ride since then. And we're going to do a whole testimony video another time, but we are going to talk a bit about it because it's so important for this conversation. So, for me, it was a lot to do with my relationship with writing, with books, and with different decoratives and like entertainment that I was consuming. But for my brother here, for Glenn, it was a lot to do with tabletop, was your first big wake up call. So, tell us a bit about that and what others should take from it.
okay, like she said, we'll be able to go into a fuller, dedicated video of testimony. So I'm gonna keep it more focused to the tabletop conversation. But growing up, one of our favorite things to do was to tell stories. As kids, we obviously played with toys. Eventually, we outgrew the toys, but we never lost the itch to tell stories and hang out. So we literally just started writing stories back and forth with each other. And eventually, as people do, they grow up, they move out of the house, and they go separate ways in life.
And it's funny because we both ended up going into the military.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But when I was in the military, I still had a love for stories. And I got into online spaces for forum roleplay. It's basically you make a character and you type up their story. Other people will read what you wrote and respond to it with their own characters. And, it can be fun. There's a lot of dark spaces in there, which I did end up dabbling into some of those, which is part of the problem. But through these spaces, I got introduced to Dungeons and Dragons properly, and I fell in love with the game. The option to create characters, tell the stories I wanted, and put a little bit of rules to it, so it's no longer just, well, I want to succeed, so obviously I'm going to succeed. You must concede.
It's like built in plot twists and
Yeah.
complications.
And it was like, oh, this is brilliant. This is a lot of fun. I'll go into more specifics of ways I slowly got dragged down in another time. But ultimately, that was my introduction to the hobby. And when I got out of the military, I was excited to bring tabletop to my family because it was a ton of fun. And, there is a lot of good in tabletop with a lot of learning about yourself, learning about others. And there is a whole separate character growth process in the hobby. Um,
Now, I will say before we get too far into it, we'll give you a nice clear cut answer here. Is tabletop itself, the hobby, bad?
no.
No. It's just another form of entertainment, just like movies and books. Now, the stuff in it can be a problem, and we're going to get more into that. But
Eventually, since I was the one that introduced my family to tabletop, I had to take on the role of GM early on. And so I looked into a lot of different game systems, found a lot of stuff I really liked in them, and we played a lot of different games. Always with the focus of, I like the rules, here's our world.
yeah, so we are big world builders. I think I've said before that Glenn and I are building a whole world together that we plan to write a lot of books in. And we're actually working on a tabletop system that goes with that world. That should be a lot of fun. Um, But anyway, so for us, we were always big on home brewing. So we really just took the mechanics out of the game systems and just put our own worlds with it and did what we want with it. Um, so for us, at least for me, I never really saw, I never read the lore in the game system books. Even when was a GM, we just played our own thing. So that was never really a problem for for us for a while. But we'll get there. Go on.
And so, with these conditions and me at the time not walking with Christ like I should have, I was not being discerning and I was not looking deep at the books. It wasn't until I picked up a book called Exalted. Now, what attracted me to this game was it allowed you to play a very high power, high level fantasy. And I had not seen any other games that offered that. So it was unique, it was different, and I was like, ooh, I'm excited to see what stories we can tell with this. And this is the game that gave me my wake up call. As I was reading through the rules, I eventually came on their magic section. And there's various ways you could have your powers, drink like a special elixir that grants you abilities. And then there was one in particular where you make a contract with a demon known as Mara. For those unfamiliar, this is the name of a very real world demon from Indian mythology.
And unfortunately, this is not a rare case of tabletop using real demon names or incorporating things like tarot cards. It actually pops up in many of the popular systems.
Oftentimes, games that it, tarot is a very weird thing to include, but they're there.
Yeah.
We can discuss on that later, but ultimately, reading the rules of how you keep and maintain your magic power with this demon, the game asks you to. I'll try to word this so YouTube doesn't have a fit. The game asks you to seduce another, have intimacy with them, and at the climax of the event, to reap their soul and then offer their soul up to your demonic patron in exchange for a little bit of magic power.
Now, if you're telling me that that is just a fantasy that Christians are okay with indulging in, maybe you should do a little more pray. That is so dark and wicked. That should just not be a thing.
That,
And the fact it's built into the mechanics of the game is horrendous. So it was really that moment when you got a discernment, like really like that ick, right?
yeah, I'd been wrestling with some of the things I've been seeing in the tabletop community as a whole, and a lot of poor portrayals of God. But it wasn't until I read that it just, the scales came off my eyes, and I saw the hobby space for what it was in a lot of these books, which was just filled to the brim with dark, wicked, compromised fantasies. And again, through forum roleplay, I'd seen a lot of dark, compromised, make your character darker, make them a little more insane, and like then we'll want to engage with your character. And just, I saw how much it was really just dragging people down into a pit.
And when it comes to tabletop, there's kind of three different levels when it comes to playing the game. There's first the system. So there's the foundation of the mechanics, the lore of the game, and what they're encouraging you to play and how they're encouraging you to play. Then there's the players and the fantasies that they're going to put into the game or what narratives they want to drive. And then there's the GM who's ultimately in charge and they're supposed to help guide the narrative as well. So, I mean, you could be sitting there easily saying, well, I can play one of these games that are compromised
Without compromising.
without compromising. And honestly, that's what we did for a while. When we got convicted on it, should we put our money towards people who are creating material that is indulging in unbiblical mindsets and behavior? And that's really the thing here, Christians, is that we have to show our support with our money, with what we're sharing, what we're promoting. Otherwise, this kind of content is going to keep being made. And that's the thing here. There's a lot of people are like, oh, there's sex scenes in every single movie, and I'm not going to give up TV. That's the wrong mindset. We have to demand entertainment that's not going to compromise us. And the same thing goes with tabletop. And it goes back to that satanic panic and Christians not getting involved in the hobby. So Satan's had a stronghold in the tabletop RPG community since its inception. And that's why it's so hard to find a game system that isn't compromised.
And to offer you guys a little extra transparency, it was up until maybe 2 weeks ago, really working on this, that we both fully cemented in we have to set some of these games aside. It's just because we already owned it, and it was like, well, I can't, I can choose to not engage with buying from them further. I can also choose to put it aside permanently.
And I think it's been one of the hardest and yet easiest parts about when like God took the scales off our eyes when it comes to entertainment. And for me, he also lifts my depression, which I'll really talk about in a testimony video. And it was kind of the warning that if I didn't get rid of certain medias, I was just going to invite those spirits back and I was going to end up in the same depression I was before. And that's what I'm telling you. It's more than just entertainment. You are giving legal hold for negativity in your life. And it's not worth a video game. It's not worth keeping a book on your shelf. It's not worth tabletop. We have gotten rid of what? I know I've gotten rid of hundreds of dollars worth of merch, and you've gotten rid of like way more, right?
Whew, if we're talking the merch I just wholesale got rid of, we're boy. I mean, if we talk strictly tabletop, over $1,000.
Just tabletop?
Just
Oh
tabletop.
wow. I thought that included the video game.
Oh no, if we talk video games, thousands, and if we talk trading cards, even more so. There's the ooh, I don't like to think about how much money I got rid of.
And if you've seen my other videos, you know I always take a temperate approach to subjects. And so if this approach seems extreme, it's because it's so important. And we love tabletop. We love the hobby
Yes.
itself. And we are actually very frustrated that we can't find a system. And while we are working on our own system, we want to play other systems. We get bored of one system. So, with that in mind, if you are a Christian and you have thought about this kind of stuff, making a tabletop system, and you have one or you're working on one, please let us know. And if you're working on one, when you finish it, let us know. We would be happy to try it out and promote it because this is our call to action, you guys. Get out there and make some awesome tabletop games. Make crunchy games, make more narrative games, make simple, make complex, like do all of it because they all have their place. But we need stuff that's not going to ask players to make pacts with demons who aren't going to have mechanics involving bad intimacy.
Also, share with us the games that you know or believe to be safe. Like, if you know there's a clean game that's worth playing, please share it because one of the big things that I care about in this topic is not leaving people empty handed. It's a big hobby. There's a lot of people involved in it, and there's a lot of friendships built around it. And to ask everyone to just wholesale give it up, it runs the risk of doing a lot of damage rather than helping
Yeah.
if people aren't careful.
And not everyone is as crazy as us and will make their own game system because that is not easy.
No, it's not. Now, in the spirit of not keeping you empty handed, one game, and I reserve the right to say that our stance in the future can change. But one game system that we've enjoyed for a long time, and even now see as perfectly safe to play, is called Genesis. It is what's known as a system agnostic game, meaning it doesn't give you a setting. It gives you rules to build a game on. Does this ask a lot out of GMs and players? Yes, I'm not going to lie, it does. But it comes with a lot of narrative flair and options that you don't see in a lot of other games.
So it's a lot of fun if the GM and the players are all kind of creative people because they have narrative dice that make things pretty exciting. And when it comes to the home brewing or the world building, if you don't have your own world, just pick your favorite IP and have people play in a world like that or something adjacent to it.
And they do also offer setting books based on some of the game brands that they own. I haven't reviewed each of their settings thoroughly enough to say whether I think each of their settings is perfectly safe or not. But if you need a quicker setting, they are available.
They're also the ones who made the Star Wars games, so if you enjoyed that or you like Star Wars, check them out. They're we've always enjoyed it.
It is a very good game.
It is.
So, as Christians, my biggest advice to everyone who's listening, stay in prayer, talk to God more than you engage in any games or other fantasy, and use your own discernment when it comes to these games. As we said, more often than not, the games we've experienced are kind of asking Christians to compromise, and that's a tough place to be.
And we know how hard it is to give up something that you like, and be like, well, I don't engage that way, or what about this? It's not worth it, man. It's not. And some of the games that we have really looked in depth on that have some serious problems are games like, and if I miss any in this list, I'll just like make a list right here of anything I might miss too. So there's D&D, Warhammer 40K, Cyberpunk, which made us sad because we really love how crunchy it is. But if you read through the book,
It's not a good fantasy.
It's not a good fantasy. And the stuff they encourage is bad. The art's not necessarily good either. Anyway,
Exalted.
please don't. I know somebody out there will just in spite go get it, but please don't. Like, I'm sure you're going to get something in your house if you buy that. Please don't. You've been warned.
Anything produced by the company White Wolf, they're the ones that made the game Exalted, and their broader brand is known as the World of Darkness, playing vampires, mages, werewolves, and just really engaging with the occult. If a high fantasy setting has you, you know, reaping souls for demons, I can only imagine what engaging in what's built on real world occult imagery and ideas is going to ask of you.
And even Fabula Ultima. That was one we debated on for a while and being like, ah. But there was one class that we were like, about, and then the updates they've actually made specific demonic names attached to certain.
Yeah, that one is truthfully mostly safe,
Was.
but there is stuff going on that is not great.
Yeah. I mean, now that they've added like demons to it, so oh well. Now there are many, many tabletop RPG games out there. So yes, if you know any, please let us know that are okay.
If there's any you want us to really take a look at, let us know that as well. We can definitely do some deep dives on some of them to really elaborate on what we're talking about.
Yes. So if you have any in particular that you want to hear, let us know and we can prioritize those. But ultimately, tabletop RPG games as a concept are not evil, but Satan has had a hold in the community for pretty much the entirety of its lifespan. So Christians, get out there, make some good tabletop games, and let's take some land, okay?
If you love the hobby and you love the Lord, consider it, if God calls you to it, work for the Lord.
Yeah, like what's better than that? Being able to create a cool game alongside God. Like, it's pretty awesome.
If you're walking away from this video feeling like we're asking you to give up a large part of your life, and dare I say, something you've let be ingrained into your identity, our identity is supposed to be in Christ, not in tabletop, not in media. And the joy of the Lord and the love of God is always, always going to be better than any fantasies or games and stories we can make on our own. Reality has to come before fantasy.
Amen to that. And we say this as people who used to be very unhealthy
Yes.
into fantasy, and so we don't want to leave you all depressed. Go out there, make some games, find some good ones, and
Continue to have fun.
yeah, have fun. Just stay away from the bad stuff.